Audio walkers are going there. And the recording has started.
All right, the 2025 budget workshop for the South Whitby Parks and Recreation District is called to order on October 16th at 6:01 p.m. We have a quorum present.
Yes. That's we're ready for the workshop. Okay. Sorry. That went quicker than I was
There was your
expecting.
cue.
I'm used to public comments at this point. Okay, well, as you guys had last month and got an updated version in front of you of the 2025 budget. No major additions, as you should have gotten your packet, were made since last month. I noted the three changes that we did make. We added a little bit more to the election cost. Reminder, three of the board or commissioners are up for re-election next year. But that was offset nicely by the fact that our CPA contract was a lot less than we expected this year. That was great. And then we got our updated numbers from the county, and our levy revenue is up. So overall, no major changes from last month. And the ones that we do have are positive. Another thing that you received over the last couple days are the projection sheets. Very hard to do projections when you are dealing with major capital projects coming down the pike. So I'm going to give Carrie a lot of credit for she did the heavy lifting on this. But worth noting on the projections, just so you guys know, and this again was in your packet. We did leave the campground in the budget, but we pushed it out to 2029. Could be sooner, could be later, we don't know, but we did leave it in there because we don't want to abandon that project. For the budget purposes, we had to estimate what the levy rate's going to be. This time next year, we'll have a much better idea of what that'll be because we'll have a lot more updated estimate cost for staffing and everything else it's going to take to run the pool. Same thing, the expenditures that we put in for the pool and the projected have to do from the feasibility study that we did. We're sure those numbers are going to be, well, we know they're going to be updated and we're sure they're going to change, but for now, that was the best numbers that we had. So some of the longer range projections right now, we did them to do our due diligence, but next year, I think we'll have a much better understanding of where the budget's going to land in the next 5 to 6 years. A couple things you may notice in 2027, we're going to have to pull from our reserves, which makes sense because, as you know, one of our fundamental principles is that we have to have 25% of our operating budget put aside. Well, in 2027, our operating budget is going to explode because of the pool. So it makes sense that we're going to have a lot more reserves we're going to have to put away. And then in 2026, you may note that the expenses exceed the revenue. That's also something we anticipated. That's because we're going to have some pool expenses like insurance and probably some staffing costs that we will incur prior to the pool opening. So nothing in that surprised us when we were doing it. It's just part of the transition into this new building. So those are just some of the highlights. I'm not going to go page by page on this thing. You guys have had a month with it, but would open up to any comments that you guys have or thoughts or inputs. I know we've had some side conversations with questions, but
that projected increase is almost like a fifth, isn't it? It's quite a bit.
Which one?
The overall increase when we in 2027.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we'll know a lot more when we know what our real budget's going to be, but that's going to be a big one. But, we anticipate it's part of having a bigger budget, bigger facility.
Page in your the is
Yes.
the pool stuff based on that feasibility stuff. So that's where that's where those numbers are coming. And that says option B. Yeah.
And next year's budget will be a lot easier for us to do because, well, like I said, every step we get closer to opening that pool is a step more information we have, and all of that. So, but we're very, I think what we have here is our best guess at this point. And as always, kudos to Carrie, who's worked tirelessly to get into the weeds on a lot of these numbers. So. You take your time and if there's any questions or comments. I'll just remind everyone that the next step will be next month, which would be the budget hearings, open to the public for their comments. And then with no objections at that point, we would approve the budget at the next meeting. Tonight is just for your comments or inputs. If you still have more beyond what you've already given me.
On the second page with the transfers to be determined.
So that will be what you see in the lower section of the projection. So that will be so the January transfer from reserve to meet beginning cash requirement, that will be nothing. And transfer to reserve will also be nothing because both of those funds have enough to meet those goals. There will be added a transfer to the capital reserve because there will be some funds available for that. And so I will add those in later, but I didn't want to finalize those until I know really where we're, unless anything else changes. So
That cost increase, like from year 1 to year 5 on the last page, how do you come up with that number to begin with? I know it's difficult, but
it's tight. So
it's solely rough estimates, obviously,
Yeah.
right?
The updated
Yeah,
feasibility study will help us quite a bit.
Because the initial number and it incrementally climbs very gradual, right, in my mind. But
We did some plugging and playing on that. And like I said, really this of all the budgets we've ever done, this is probably the most difficult and most inaccurate 6-year projection we'll be able to do because for us to tell you on October 16th, 2024, what our budget is going to look like in 27, 28, 29, almost impossible. So I think we did the best we could to kind of, we're very, this year, next year, even 27, I think or 26, excuse me. I think we're pretty confident where we are on those budgets, but beyond that, it's really best guessed at this point. And this time next year, when we're talking about this, the numbers will be a lot firmer because we'll know, we'll be a lot farther along in what we're doing.
also the feasibility study hasn't had insurance, so we have an estimate for how much insurance will cost, liability for adding the pool. And I don't know, how far out they were planning these figures to actually start. Were they thinking 27?
Mm.
They were probably thinking 26, so there may be some more inflation. But
Anything else jumping out? So it's not major changes from last month, so that's good. And the questions I've gotten from you guys over the last month, just clarifying things, I think they're good questions. If you have comments beyond this meeting, I mean, we're not going to be able to make significant changes beyond this meeting without another meeting, right? Because the point is but if you catch something or have questions, a lot of things I've gotten from you guys this last month have just been clarification questions. Like, can you explain this one to me? And, still open to those. Want to make sure this is right. Want to make sure there's nothing that jumps out, but pretty straightforward budget, I think. There's nothing, and that's good news. Means Gary's a superstar.
in the
There you go. Yeah.
I answered my own question.
Yeah, oh, there you go. Well done. Be a very quick meeting if you guys do that. The sign-in sheet. Yeah, that can.
I'm gonna point out one thing. On the projection sheet. The bottom where it says available cash for fiscal principal 4 and 5. Basically, unless we plug that in, that's just gonna keep carrying forward, which we may need. Come 26. But that is the funds that are not assigned. And if we do plug them in, then it changes our getting cash.
4 and 5, you said?
This line right here. We talked about this one quite a bit. It's money that, particularly if some of the stuff we're talking about tonight, that could be funds that could be used to support other things that we're doing. So that's good. Really, it's a very healthy budget right now. I think it's, we're in good shape going into a major project. So that's good. You don't want to be behind the 8 ball before the game starts. So I think the next couple of years it projects really well. There's no other comments or questions, then that's the easiest budget workshop we'll ever have.
I'm good.
With that, then we will adjourn the budget workshop at 6:13. We'll move into the regular board meeting, so it'll be October 16, 2024. SWPRD Parks and Recreation District Board of Commissioners meeting is called to order at 6:13. Have a quorum present. The first item is public comment.
Which we have, looks like we potentially have several, which is good. Just remind anyone here for public comment, you have up to 3 minutes to share whatever you would like. If it's an item not on the agenda, the board likely won't dialogue with you about it, but will give direction to staff if needed to follow up. If it is an agenda item that you're here to discuss, then that's something that would be discussed when we get to that part of the agenda, but feel free to speak as much as you'd like during that 3 minutes. And I'm just going to call out the list of who signed up. And if you want to speak, great. If you don't want to speak, that's fine too, if you're just here to listen. First person signed in was Mackenzie. Mackenzie, would you like to speak? Are you guys together speaking? Oh, if you want Martin to speak first, that's fine.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Martin Coombe, Vice President of the SWPRD Youth Soccer Group. It's Mackenzie Peterson, she's President. And we just wanted to draw to your attention. It's kind of an ongoing thing. This goes back a long time with Parks and Rec and the club. Right now, it's the issue of we feel like we're facing more and more restrictions on use of the complex. It's kind of the last thing goes back to COVID, where we lost car parking space. When the club was resting because we couldn't play, we lost, I don't know, 10% of car parking spaces, which we were probably using at the time. Then once we came back with increased numbers of kids, because we had too many people concentrated at a certain time, we were asked to spread our start times out to spread the load on the car park. Then we've now been asked to drop player capacity or user capacity down to 100 people at any one time. Now we've also, because of the new policy, winter policy, there's no play on the fields now after November the 1st through to March 1st. And just recently, the septic system gave way, and we were asked to move like a whole set of games 3 weeks off the fields to the elementary school, which we did last weekend. So it's just kind of like an ongoing list of things that we kind of feel we're getting squeezed, and we're just seeing restrictions on use of the complex. And we're happy to try and accommodate, and we always will try and accommodate, but it's, I don't know. Do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I would say too that, we are trying to grow our club and building more competitive teams that requires more year-round usage. And we have been accommodating in that. We know that the fields cannot handle that. So we have gotten a grant to fix up the community center fields for those winter months. So we are trying to, have solutions to the problems that we get it. But during the fall, for example, we have less teams than we've had in the past, and we're not allowed to play as many games as we had, which is a restraint to, what we're able to do for the youth. And so I think just like addressing the septic issue, because I guess that is the biggest concern at this point, or at least that's what we've been told is the biggest reason why we can only have 2 games at any given time on the entire complex. So just trying to figure out what can we do to eliminate that as a concern.
We realised you've given us the elementary field as another option, but we like to play at the complex because our equipment's there. Come November the 1st, we still have games going through to the end of November, and we're going to have to move set of goals off the complex down to elementary field and also the community centre. And we also have to line out fields, which is it's a hassle. It's not impossible, but it's a hassle because we have to move that equipment down every week to line the fields. So whether we can get any respite from that, we have, I think, about 7 games between now and the end. Well, not now, between the 1st of November and the end of November. Spread across 3 fields of 3 different sizes. So we're going to have to line 3 fields for a whole month. Different. But anyway, maybe that's something we can speak to you, or whether the commissioners can.
I would love to speak to you. Yeah, I want to reach out to him. I think
Yeah, that would save us a lot of issues right now. Having to move the goals is a big issue. Right. Anyway, but the overall thing is limited restriction where we'd like to see more soccer at the complex, not less. So we have 3 minutes.
Oh yeah, I was giving you a 6 minutes combined.
You want to say some more?
Yeah, you get.
I mean, I just would say that like our emphasis is providing youth soccer as much as they want it. And when you're restricted by your facilities, it is hard to provide that. And I mean, we're all volunteers, so it's like the extra time it takes to try and get all of this organized really quickly last minute is cumbersome. So just trying to find a way that we can continue to grow our program, provide soccer that all the kids love. So
I'd like to ask a follow-up question. You said limited play in the fall, like the numbers are lower. Is that because of restrictions or just because of usual fall signups?
Well, our fall rec registration has declined, but our select programs, typically in the past like 3 years, we've only had 1 select team. Now we have 4 select teams, which means that they're playing longer seasons into November, late November, and can play into December. So those have grown, but I would say overall our registration has declined slightly. But yeah, we're hoping that it'll pick up again now that we're offering more select programs, because that seems to be what kids are wanting. It's more competitive and they're not leaving the island to go play. They're staying here instead.
Specifically, you're kind of saying that in the fall. So that's why I was asking that question. Like you traditionally you've had maybe 1 team, but now you're anticipating that you potentially could have 4 teams.
We do have 4
You
teams,
do have
and that's why
okay.
we knew this, and so that's why we have set up the community center, because for that reason.
And actually kind of a question that relates to that, then when is your high season and how will that be affected?
We have 2 high seasons. That's our rep season. That's normally April, May, and now we're into the full one, which is September to the end of October. So we have October the 26th, so not this Saturday coming, next Saturday is the end of that season. That's about, I would say, 2/3 of our program finishes. So we have, say, 4 teams that play on through November. Select, and then we start again with some teams probably in January, February time for a new season. But that's like maybe 1 or 2 teams.
Okay.
And we can provide details if you want those.
Thank you both for coming.
Thank you for.
Of course, of course, always welcome. Next, Bill, were you here for a comment or just for our wonderful conversation?
I'm mostly here to listen.
Okay, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brian.
Rich,
Yeah, I make a few comments.
excellent.
So Rich Boccigalupi, Parks, Parks and Aquatics Foundation. And just want to make a comment as we go forward into the engineering design and estimating portion of the project. I ran a chemical and process engineering firm for many years in Seattle. So we built huge process facilities, unit operations, and we did a lot of this work for swimming pools, but there are many parallels when you go through the engineering and estimating process. We're getting deep into it, and I just wanted to share with the board. The numbers that we're getting from our engineering firm right now are still estimates based upon a rough idea of an average cost per square foot of the building. The engineers have not done a full capital estimate, therefore they really don't know what this facility is going to cost. Plain and simple. Now, we have a very good idea of a ballpark of where it's going to go. But as we move forward with the engineering work, there's 2 approaches. First approach is you do a detailed engineering design first, give it to the client, let them decide if they can afford it or not. And then you move into contract and true work. That's the way it's done if you have a large engineering budget, and we didn't have that. So instead, what's happening is, and this is very normal, but we have to be aware of it, is that our true cost of engineering and designing and building this facility will be determined once we're at a spot where we can't go back, instead of doing it at a spot where we can make a decision what goes next. So with that being said, the estimates we're getting from the engineers right now are still on a rough square foot basis. So when they say we need to remove X number of dollars from the budget, they're just saying we need to remove space or we need to remove function. They actually don't know if that's going to get us down to the actual number still. So just to be aware of that. And we haven't got our numbers yet for the environmental or I would say the civil work outside for the water remediation, water source. So there's still a lot of unknowns. And the point I just want to make forward is as you guys are asked to make decisions, just remember, the engineer's number 1 job is to get a functioning facility for us in budget. But nowhere in their job list would have a facility that we're going to like. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean it like they only know they're going to get paid a certain number of billable hours. And they have to get the thing in at a certain budget. So when we're making choices, my ask is that we prioritize any non-functional choice over the aquatic or the exercise experience. Otherwise, we're going to have a facility that doesn't deliver what the community was expecting. So that means if we diminish the aquatic experience or we diminish the recreation or exercising, we'll have issues. So I would say when they come forward and say we need to eliminate X number of dollars, let's look in areas of materials. Let's look in areas of anything but aquatics and exercise. I know you guys have tough decisions to make, but let's keep that in mind. They don't know the cost yet. So when they make these recommendations, we can't guarantee that we're actually going to get what they say we're going to save. So it's a tough game, but we're here to support Brian and the team and everything. So I just wanted to bring that forward. So thank you again. And that's my comment.
And we're commenting that Rich, I don't know if you mentioned, he's also part of the JAC that's done so much of so much of the work to this point to get us to where we're at. So
Yeah.
I forget if you mentioned that or not, but I think it's worthy that foursome, including Eric and Matt and Marnie, have spent countless hours digging into this. So
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
his input's based on a lot of work. So okay. Well, that 2 things. First of all, I know sometimes it can be awkward to get up and leave. If you guys plan to make a comment and walk out, you will not offend us. You're also welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. But don't feel like particularly you 2, you're kind of trapped in where you're sitting. So if you came to that,
Yeah.
Swim home.
but Mackenzie and Martin, also don't hesitate to, I would love to chat more about some of the comments you made, because I would love to work on that. So don't hesitate to reach out if you
Yeah,
keep the conversation going.
thank you for your time.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Appreciate what you're doing.
Gonna fill the swimming pool tonight.
That just-
We're free
No,
water.
it's outside. Yeah,
Yeah.
just.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report,
Which we do not have.
which we do not have.
Go pretty fast.
We have vouchers.
All right, then we shall move on to the vouchers, which, Carrie sent out an updated list.
We, okay, so, first of all, the capital items, you'll start with those, the new ones, you'll see a couple big ones, ARC and Pacifica. But of the updated list, worthy of notes were a couple large items. You'll see the crane
Can you
construction.
make it bigger, please,
Oh,
Brian?
yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, remind us what the Krieg was.
Craig was the sports complex asphalting and also the maintenance shop asphalting. So it's
thank you.
two different projects together. You'll see this one down here, which is a large number. Sorry, let me scroll down, this one. And then also not too far below it is the McBride fencing, which I don't know if you've had a chance to go to the community park yet, but looks really good. So the black fencing there. First time I pulled in, I got halfway down the fence line before I realized it was a new fence line, which is exactly what you want, right? It's not drawing my attention. It's not, so.
Yeah, they did a clean job because the grass looks not disturbed either, which is
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
That's-
Yeah, you wouldn't know it hasn't been there for a while.
Yeah,
When did they finish that?
the 7th, so Monday the 7th, so yeah. That was good. And then the only other thing that jumped out at me, there's obviously some moving expenses, so we're still a work in progress here. We're getting there, but, before pictures of this place versus what it looks like now would shock you. And we still have a little bit of work to do, but, nothing else really jumped out to me on the vouchers, but would be open if any of you saw anything that you'd like to discuss.
Question about that I caught when I was looking back at the comparison of the other rental. The utilities are part of this, but were you paying utilities before
We're paying separately, yes.
separately?
It was not.
But here
included
you're
in
not,
that.
it's inclusive.
Right, and we were paying for utilities and the custodial and
Right.
was it?
Propane and
Propane,
Yeah.
yeah, that for the other,
Garbage.
for the county as
Yeah.
well.
all that stuff. So, yeah, this is
Just
a
say
one
that
stop
because
shop.
it looks like it's a wash roughly
It
then
is.
at the time you throw in utilities, right?
Yeah, it's about the same price. I mean, maybe a little bit more, but it's,
It's just kind of spread around the budget, the savings.
so, and a lot more space. But no generator, so if that thunder comes back, we could be in trouble. Just so you know. We have no candles.
How have you felt as a whole after all the hard work of moving in this facility compared to the last? Is it
It's better than I thought. It's not as intrusive to space as I thought it might be, like hearing everyone's conversations and all of that. There's certainly some challenges.
Yeah.
Today I had to go away for a couple hours because we were doing budget. It is hard to, you don't have that private door you can close, and that's fine. You just adjust. The biggest thing we don't have here is a conference room, and we're still working with that. The school seems open to us letting us use that room occasionally. But that's fine. I mean, if that's the biggest problem we have. We'll be okay. So, yeah, it's been nice. I think it's been good so far.
Yeah.
You? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
A little project. And if nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to approve these vouchers.
The consent agenda.
Oh, good catch.
I know,
Wow.
you were just testing me, Brian.
Yes, I was.
17.
Yes, I was. Yes, our new consent agenda. And back to you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. So, just to kind of revisit, given this is our first month, so it would be a motion to approve the consent agenda, which encompasses an approval of last month's meeting minutes along with the voucher list and construction fund. And the language is really easy. It's a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And I would also just add, just as a reminder, that if any commissioner feels that an item on the consent agenda is worthy of further conversation, they could pull that off the consent agenda to make it its own item. As going forward, there might be more than just these two items on there. It might be I use Tom's Diamond Dust as a good example. You know, there's no reason for us to discuss that and make a separate motion for that. So that's something that could be put on a consent agenda, but commissioners are free to pull anything off a consent agenda. As Jennifer said.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just a simple motion and it's all done.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, I.
Krista, I.
Jake, I.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion passes. Moving on to the staff report, please.
Okay. All right, staff report this month, recreation. Sky and I met with Brenda Lovey, just following up from a couple months ago. We're going to meet regularly with her and Sandy Lusk to talk about the triathlon. Good meeting. Brenda has been working with the local chambers, trying to get some interest, which they seem to have. We're going to meet again in January, just trying to brainstorm fresh ideas to breathe some life into the triathlon. Basketball registration, getting ready for that, opens up in a couple of weeks on November 1st. And tonight, or actually last week, but tonight Sky is at the new pickleball league, which seems pretty popular. So we've created a league out of this, and it's been fun. Lots of stuff. Speaking of Diamond Dust, Tom's stuff, Diamond Dust was delivered on the 30th. As mentioned before, the new fence line along fields 1 and 4 was installed on the 7th. And Craig Construction did a great job again. Maintenance shop looks great. Sports complex looks great. Water tank underwent its annual cleaning October 1st, which was always a fun little video game they play with those little gadgets they do. But and I didn't finish the sentence, but we're dealing with the Department of Health and some of the clean water issues, like with lead and with nitrate, some of the testing issues. So not much to report on here other than there's been a few things that one was a King issue where we have to do nitrate testing in our water and the reports weren't filed. So we got a notice of violation, which doesn't mean anything yet, but will if they don't get those reports in. So we contacted them and they're on that. And then the state has a new lead and copper requirement that we have to prove that we don't have lead pipes. So Tom mostly was taking pictures and I was sending those off to them to meet that criteria. So this sentence didn't get finished, but that's what it would have said. Director's report, I think you might know this now because they sent a correction postcard yesterday, but there was an error in the voter pamphlet that listed under the school district replacement levy. It listed our explanatory statement for the pool from last November. Carrie called actually we brought it. Yeah, we brought it to the attention actually of Island County. Carrie did. And it was updated online. The brochure you got is wrong, but they sent a postcard out yesterday saying, oops. So, yeah, so, they are not approving another pool with the school. That is not it. So, the NRPA conference last week, I went to Atlanta. It was great. A lot of aquatic talk. The auditorium there at the Georgia Convention Center is just ginormous. It took me a day and a half just to visit all the vendors. And so it was, and a good portion of those were aquatic vendors. So we're able to have a lot of conversations, give some information, make some contacts. Well worth it. Better than I thought it was going to be. Also spent a lot of time talking about registration software because we're going to be a very different kind of facility soon. So getting some information about those kind of, we have a pool and people need to swipe in when they come in and we want to make it quick. We don't want it to bottleneck during lesson time and all those kind of conversations. So, and now this week is the week where you get nailed with about 20 emails a day from them following up. Call me, I'll call you. But it was good. It was a lot of good information.
Was there talk, Brian, about partnerships with the school districts as well? I'm just wondering.
Good question.
No. Across, nothing.
No, nothing. No, I didn't initiate that either. A lot of the vendors were people that were either selling stuff, but one in particular, this gal just does aquatic networking. So everything from training, and she put me in touch with a guy that does staffing and cost estimates for staffing and putting all the stuff that we're working on right now. So I meet with him in a couple of weeks to pick his brain and learn all that. So yeah, it was a really good conference. Better than like I said, better than I expected. And Atlanta, who knew? My city. as we talked about, we're out of our old offices. Final walkthrough with Island County. Island County commented that they were very pleased. The building we left in very good shape, even for as long as we'd been there.
Was there any sort of a security deposit? Was there any?
Just hand them the keys. They did a walkthrough and yeah, it was in really good shape. We cleaned it out well, but even that, the wear and tear was, for as long as we had been there, was pretty minimal. So we mentioned the price of this earlier, but we have updated our agreement letter with Teresa Johnson, who's our CPA. We'll be doing another bond rating here in a couple months, so it's good to have her on board. Had the annual student walkout on September 26th. The student group who last year when I first started reached out and did a permit and paid a few dollars. I think it was $25 we charged them. And they did it the right way up aboard. This time they reached out and then decided just to do it without us. And what we didn't want them to do was to go do their loud protest up by the playground where families are trying to play and all that. And that's exactly what they did. We also had in the red here is stuff that wasn't in your board packet. So stuff I've added since then. Because over this last weekend, we also had a large Ultimate Frisbee group show up. Same concept. They reserved it last year, did it above board. This year they just showed up and they take the park over. And you know, I get that it's a park, but in this case, when you bring a large group in, particularly if you're taking money for those people to come to play Ultimate Frisbee at some kind of group, organized group. So anyways, we're talking as a staff about how to minimize this. We want people to use the park, but we also want to make sure that we don't have groups coming in amplifying or charging or doing other stuff.
Doing like an ultimate tournament or
Something like that. It was Tyson, our new park staff. It was his first day. And so he shows up and he just sees a lot of people all over the park throwing Frisbees and doesn't know it's not a normal Sunday. And so it was an interesting combination, but yeah. So then Sky, I think, got online and found the invitation to come to our park for the, I don't know if it was a tournament or if it was just a big ultimate.
We know who it is. This is year 7.
Yeah. And last year they did the permit and did the application.
So we know what they're.
Yeah. This year they figured why just save the money. So bit of a challenge. We'll be co-hosting on it. Actually, they changed the date on us. It's October 23rd. This is interesting. A community meeting with the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Snohomish County Parks. They're doing a community meeting. I have a flyer on my desk, I think. It's a 10-year water access public meeting. So they're coming to talk about their 10-year plan. They're doing that with all the counties, not just us. And actually, they changed the date and added San Juan County. So me and representatives from the different districts will be there.
So it's San Juan Island and Snohomish
Yes, and
County.
us. So it's a lot, but people that have concerns out there, we put 2 flyers at all the beach accesses to let people know. So it's the 23rd. It's next Wednesday. But a good chance for people. I mean, there's a lot of people that have questions out there, and I try to talk to our parks guys, and we unfortunately a lot of times just have to say the same thing, which is this isn't our park. So if you want to add this or complain about that, and so this gives a chance for them to at least hear directly from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So happy to be a part of that. Should be an interesting evening. So, and I can send you guys the link if you're interested.
Yes,
I
please.
would like that.
Yeah. Should we put it any place else?
We're putting it out on social media,
Okay.
and like I said, I laminated.
Cruise list.
Oh, interesting. We laminated the signs for the beaches, and I asked the guys. I said, put one up. They have a board like at Lone Lake. They've got a community board, but then like put it like at the dock, like attach it to the dock out there, and attach it to places where people are actually walking. So
And it's not the 28th, it's the 23rd.
it's the 23rd. They changed the date since I've done this.
Same time.
Yeah, same time. It's virtual, so you can sit in your house and just listen. I'm intrigued. And there, tomorrow morning we have what they're calling a training. I'm not sure what that entails, but they're having us co-host people come in or virtually come in and talk about what we're going to be talking about, I guess. So interesting. This is just another FYI. We're notified by the Parks and Aquatics Foundation that starting at the first of the year, they're going to start charging a small administrative fee for groups where they're holding their money. High I being the prime example. So pretty common. They haven't been doing it. And so pickleball donations also, if they're still coming in, would apply to this. I forget what the fee was, but it was not
That was like 5%.
something like, that was 3%, but something like that. It was, all those organizations, pickleball and high had been notified. They let us know about a month ago, so, not a shock, and none of them were like, oh,
Acronym.
sorry. Healthy
Healthy.
youth,
Healthy Island
Youth.
Youth Initiative.
there we go. They're the scholarship people. They're the ones that, they do the chum run. They're the ones who do scholarships up and down the island. Sorry, I'm using acronyms. And next month's meeting is the budget hearings, as I said before, and that is the staff report. I feel like I'm doing a late night show when I say it that way.
So next month,
Mhm.
will you have student walkout and the Frisbee people back on the agenda with some thoughts on what you're trying to?
If we have new thoughts, I mean, it is tough when it's a public park to tell, to say, we can't exactly shut down the park because the Frisbee people are coming. There's been contact with the school group following up. And there's some adults involved there too, including some people in interesting positions, that I think, that haven't heard back from. I haven't reached out to the Frisbee people yet. And, it isn't about the money, it's about the understanding. If we know that there's large, ginormous Frisbee people, ultimate Frisbee people coming to be in the park, we want to know that. We want to know for trash purposes, bathroom purposes. We want to know there could have been other groups scheduled to be out there that day. And so there's all those reasons to just communicate. And so, so we're working on that. And when we have something tangible, we'll bring it back. I don't, like I said, what the action step is, I'm not sure yet, but we're in discussion.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the staff report? Next on the agenda is committee and community meeting reports, if anyone has anything. Right. We will move on then to, okay.
Sorry, I have a small note. So I also went to a conference and there was a lot of talk about recreation and other things, but kind of the overarching, I would say, theme to my conferences was really about access and information. And there was, I don't remember when, but there was actually a discussion. It was a book discussion at the local library, and it was written by a local hiker who had published a new hiking book for people with disabilities. And that guide, and I brought this up then. So this is kind of a continuation of that. And basically, if we could do a better job of explaining what is here, then everyone is in a better position to make decisions for themselves. So that's it. I'll leave that there. So wherever we can improve, grade, height, material explanations with photos or anything else.
Yeah. Plan report.
Finished business, comp plan report.
All right. Pickleball courts. It's been an interesting week with pickleball courts. Working with the design team for permitting, specifically SEPA, septic, traffic concerns. Traffic concerns hit challenges this week with the county. The county informed us this week that now keeping in mind that we have 4 pickleball courts currently that we're taking away that are the parking lot. And we are opening up the parking lot for parking again. So we are taking away 4 courts and adding 6, a net of 2. But the county informed us this week that we will have to hire an engineer to do a traffic impact study, which we were ready to do that. But they said the traffic impact study needs to include the pool and the campground. That didn't make any sense. And so I reached back out and said, well, can you explain this? Because they're totally different entrances. There's no access by car between the two sites, public access. And we're adding 2 courts and to spend a lot of money on an engineer. And the pool's already got a traffic impact study. And the campground is not a current project that we've got funding that we're imminently making. And when we did the traffic impact study for the pool, you didn't make us include the campground, which is on the same side of the park. So please help me explain. And they responded with, well, it's the impact at the corner of Maxwellton and Langley Road, and that would be more traffic. I asked for a meeting, and I'm having that meeting next Tuesday. And the architect is going to drive down from Tacoma to be part of that meeting so that we can get some further information. It's not that it's the end of the world to do it. It's that pickleball's already on a tight project, and to do something, I'm also a little concerned. I forget if it was Carrie or Tom mentioned this earlier, but I thought it was a good point, that if they start lumping these 3 projects as one big project, it also could impact the pool. Because they may go back and say, oh, wait, now there's 3 ginormous projects going on simultaneously, which again, from a traffic impact particularly, but we're having the same issue with the septic. They think it's going to be a large septic impact to add the 2 extra courts. We're not seeing that, so we're pushing back on that, trying to get some information, just trying to get it done and trying to get it done on budget. And so it's been a challenging week with some of that, but very responsive guy from the county I'm meeting with. So hopefully it'll be a positive meeting on Monday. Oh, and just an update on the funding. Would-Be Island Pickleball as of Monday had received just under 30,000 of the donations towards the pickleball courts, which is great. We're still getting checks regularly. We got one yesterday. The matching portion, just to remind everyone, the grant we have has a $50,000 matching portion, which Would-Be Island Pickleball agreed to fundraise. So the grant is for 452,000, I think, and the matching portion is 50. So that's the money here is being held at the foundation. So the foundation's holding this money. So that's great. So well done by the pickleball group. A little bit more work to do, but they're off to a good start. Fields. I would have liked to have had this conversation earlier, but I will say what happened. So the septic alarms have gone off twice during the soccer season. It's not a new policy that the fields can hold about 100 people before it becomes a problem. That's not because the septic is failing or any different than it's ever been. It's a simple capacity of the tank. Tom actually had the septic guy out after last weekend, which I thought was a nice gesture to make sure that we're not missing something. Last weekend, was 2 weekends ago, I guess it was now, it was quite a mess because if the alarm's going off and people just keep using it, it's going to back in to make a mess. So we had to do a call out at our expense. We had to have people come out, staff come out on their day off and basically clean up the mess. And, so, all right. So the issue is capacity. We said this at the beginning of the season. I appreciate the public comments and I understand where they're coming from, and this is where I want to talk to them because I think there's things they just don't understand. One is that the same septic it's always been with the same capacity. It's got about a 7,500 gallon tank. 7,500, is that right? Yeah. And the guy said an average house has a 10,000 gallon tank. So it's not a big tank, but it's the same tank that's been out there all the way through it. Maybe he's wrong on that, but that's what the guy said.
Only 1,000 gallon
Yeah,
tank.
I was gonna say 1,000.
Oh, maybe it's 750. I'm getting you're right. You're right. 1,000. So
I have
yeah.
1,000 in mine.
Yeah.
So that's what it's always been. So the issue is there's just more soccer people. The same day the alarm went off, traffic was parked down the hill onto Langley Road. It was just too many people for the park. The park just isn't designed to make that many people. So the argument that we're not making accessible to them, it's like, no, their preference is to have all their games Saturday morning and early Saturday afternoon. That's what they like, right? That's what parents like. But as I talked to them in the conference last week, because that's when I'm talking to their representative, I'm like, why don't you play games on Friday? 5 o'clock game on Friday would alleviate a lot of the problem. Sunday afternoon games would alleviate a lot of the problem. Because the septic, what happens is when the septic gets to capacity, it does a 4-minute kind of release. and then it won't release again for 6 hours. So once that happens, you're stuck. And so when it hits capacity like that, it's a real problem. So Tom had the guy out to make sure, and the guy confirmed, he goes, yeah, it's working just as it's supposed to. It's just too many people at the park. So what we did was take advantage of the elementary school field, which we built up. And we simply said it's the U8, which is the one group that has the most grandparents and all that. It's the group that has the biggest crowd. Said simply, let's move them across the street so they have their own space. And that's going to alleviate the problem. And sure enough, it worked. Now, the call I get is a little challenging because their response to that was, well, you guys need to add more porta potties at the sports field. And I'm like, well, we're already paying for a porta potty at the sports field. And their response was, well, you should have two because you're displacing us because your septic failed. So then I had to have the conversation about the septic didn't fail. As we talked about in the summer, 100 people is as much as we can have at that facility. You have to spread the games out. And right now the games are kind of booked into Saturday mornings, early Saturday afternoons. So they're not stretching it late on Saturday. They're not doing there's other options that they're not taking. And they know this. And this is why I said, we want them in the sports fields. And so when we talk, I think they just kind of need to understand that this is not a vendetta to keep kids out of our sports fields. I think just the opposite. I think it's just a capacity issue. And great that they have so many kids, right? Great that they've got so many kids that are making this problem. That's with the pickleball project, though. This could solve.
I follow up on
Oh,
that.
please.
So we're rated about 480 gallons a day released into the ground over there. That's what our septic system is allowed to do. So when we say 100 kids, at the U10, U12 age group, one kid equals probably 3 to 4 people. A mom, a dad, little brother, whatever. When the U8, that's what's given us this crunch. They consume all of field one. Those kids probably average one kid 6 or 7. You got grandparents coming for the smaller kids. So you just get this rush of, we've got U10, U12 games going on. So 2 games at a time on field 4. But when the U8 hits, it is just stacked like you wouldn't believe. And this has been a 3 or 4 year problem. This is the only time this has happened is this year. That's not true. This happens every time the U8 program kicks off for a couple of weeks. It's about a 4 to 5 week event, Saturday only. For years, with Sky here trying to handle, the scheduling component, I've been saying for years, nobody wants to use a facility at all on Fridays. It's vacant.
It is big.
So let's move all those U8 games to a Friday night. I know it's not convenient, and that's what it's become is everybody wants the convenient, perfect time slot at 9 or 10 in the morning on a Saturday. So they've got the rest of their day. It's not feasible. That's not our problem. We have a facility that could be utilized Fridays and Sundays. And in the old days, we had more kids playing soccer. It was a way bigger program. Every single day was used. And so it's probably in the last 10 years or so when numbers dropped, we got really complacent with everybody having that convenient time and schedule. That's great when it works. It's not working.
Also, what I heard them say is we want to grow this for more youth. The issue isn't the youth.
It's the
It's the spectators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's
That's a very different, and I get that families want to
Yeah.
support their kids, and it's great for other siblings
Mhm.
to see and model. I am not arguing that,
Mhm.
but it's not the kids.
it's just
Yeah.
all the
Practices don't have problems.
spectators as
Right.
well.
They don't have
So-
problem practice days.
Yeah, and the problem is when we built this 20 some years ago, the county told us, you've got this much parking. Can't have events that flow down onto Langley Road. That's a 50-mile-an-hour road.
Yeah.
A kid is going to get hit.
Yeah.
And those Saturday mornings, that was happening. And so it just got to a point where Sky and I talked with the scheduler and said, you have to move the program. It's not safe. So So that's kind of how we got to where we're at. And like Martin says, well, we all want to be at the sports complex. Well, that would be ideal. But we do have other facilities that can be utilized. It's just there's push, you know. So anyway, yeah, the septic system is functioning as designed. It's not a failing component, it's a scheduling component.
So quick question,
Yeah.
you said U10, like there's two U10 games going on, the U8 is the big draw.
Yeah.
Are those actual games against other teams or are they just
I
inter?
think it's interleague.
Okay.
U8, I think it's just interleague.
Oh,
U10, U12 depends. There's rec, which I think they just intermingle, but then the select are bringing teams from town. And so they're all playing on the same marked field. It's just whichever team is scheduled.
All right, and another question that, so if the select teams are bringing kids from
From
town, maybe this is me, but I am picturing one adult and one kid in a car.
The whole family.
It's the whole family, so at least it's a full car.
younger they
Generally.
are,
Okay,
younger they
But-
are, the more.
But U10, U12, yeah, they're probably bringing, little brother, little sister.
okay, as long as,
Yeah.
because I was also imagining that this was a lot of like one parent, one kid, where people are not facilitating maybe carpooling or, to reduce the number of vehicles, as long as they're full.
It's a rush.
But I coached all the way through that, U6, all the way up through U12. I did select. And so I'm savvy with what those games look like. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking that their desire to grow is a realistic desire, regardless of how many parents or grandparents show up. I mean, that's still there.
Sure.
I guess my question is, like in late afternoon, I heard you when you said about the septic issue, that part of that about triggering it, right?
Mhm.
So is late afternoon an option for them if they spread that out, or is it? And I get the Saturday
Potentially.
versus Friday. I'm in favor of
It would
Friday.
help.
Potentially. I mean, the problem
But
is,
you're saying right now that you have two U10s, you have a U8, and it's all at the same time,
yes,
correct?
And
and it's not just one.
Right.
You might have 2 or 3 U10 games stacked up, 2 or 3 U12 games stacked up.
Yeah.
It's 9, it's 10:30, it's.
I remember the parking lot just being full. We've never had a septic issue. And we had multiple games going on at the same time. People showing up. But then again, I do not remember anybody having to park down the road. Granted, pickleball courts are
Well,
taking a few
and so
spaces.
here's the other thing. I mean, it's typical. User group has tunnel vision. We're here to play soccer, and we had this conversation a couple years ago. Post-COVID, pickleball's huge. There's people coming in to play pickleball. There's people coming in to walk. There's people coming in to, to fly their airplanes. I mean, there's so much use over there that is not soccer related. And it's only going to increase when we get 6 pickleball courts.
Yeah.
And so they need to understand that this isn't the soccer complex. We have this conversation making the sign. Sports complex. And it's everything.
Do they seem open to talking about Sunday or Friday?
I think Friday they were open to. I think part of the challenge here is there's an instant defensiveness. If
Sure.
we say something to them, there's an instant we're out to get them, and we're working on that. We're working on building because I'm glad they were here, and I really Mackenzie and Martin are 2 people that have not reached out to me on these subjects, and so I think information helps. I think conversation helps, and so we want their soccer group to grow, and we want the fields to be packed. It just has to be packed and spread out. They can't all play Saturday morning, and that's part of the lesson here. So I think the scheduler, who we usually deal with, when I mentioned Fridays, he kind of said, "Oh, that kind of makes some sense," because the septic can reset overnight. I mean, it has a capacity. There's just it hasn't changed. And if you're going to grow, then you have to grow accordingly. Like your U6 kids, they play their games on Thursday. So, I mean, they do have the young kids playing on a different night. And that's why we did the elementary school field. So they have another option. And then they did the community center field at their own. They took that initiative to get the community center field going, which is great. So now there's more field options for them to play at. So there's just all of this. And, like I said, even with the moving to the elementary school field, the instant thing wasn't like, okay, good. It was like, okay, well, give us another bathroom. So it's not our program. And then that was part of the conversation of, I mean, we gave you that. And what we did to make that work was we made it so that we paid a little bit to have the porta potty serviced weekly. That was and I told him that. I said, we'll pick up instead of it being cleaned monthly, which is what it is now, and we'll make sure it's done on Friday so that when Saturday comes, because no one plays there on Friday. So when Saturday comes, you'll have an empty porta potty. And this weekend was beautiful and sunny. I'm sure the fields were packed and it worked just perfect. So
I know historically, one of the scheduling bumps is, just to give them an inch on trying to schedule is other teams want to play on Saturdays. It's not just
I get it.
South Whidbey.
I get
So
it.
to say, it's not like they just call up and say, hey, we've got an open field on Friday, let's play on Friday. Because the other team doesn't necessarily agree to that, or doesn't jive with
I
their
get it.
schedule.
But some of those are internal games. that
Yeah,
they can
no,
play.
that part I
Yeah.
get, but I
get
that needs
Google
to
may
be
not want
clear
them
that it's
down.
not always easy for them
Yeah.
just to go, hey, we're gonna schedule a game on Friday.
And that was the other thing that we had this last week, another challenge with, is that they're asking us to reserve these fields, but they didn't give us the schedule, even though they're supposed to give us the schedule in September. So we don't even know up until this last week how many teams were playing. And again, this is part of building the trust and the communication. And I think we have a good foundation for that now. But I think we all want the same thing. We want kids packing our fields. And we just have to work together without feeling like the other side is coming against us, right? There's no one out trying to get the other side. I want them to grow and to expand. Just they have to grow and expand within the boundaries of what capacity is. Because the segue, the other part of this thing is the pickleball, for reasons I don't quite understand, may require us to address the septic. And they were talking about making a larger drain field, et cetera, et cetera. But when the septic guy was out inspecting this, he goes, you guys could add a 1,500 gallon tank next to this. So keep the 750 gallon tank, add another tank for about 15,000, plus the design cost and other permitting. Park doesn't really need that, other than this one day times 3 or 4 weeks a year. But if pickleball is going to require us to do more septic stuff, now that doesn't mean that the park can handle that many people, because again, they're down on Langley Road, the parking lot still is full. But that could, if we have to fix that issue anyways, that could be something. So what I gave that to our pickleball designer and said, listen, can you get back to public health and say, would this appease your septic issues if we had basically 1,500 more gallons of a septic tank? Seems to me that would take care
But
of
it's just the tank. They use the existing drain field. They're
Yes.
just adding the tank.
It'd just be a buffer
Gotcha.
for these huge events.
Yeah.
Where you just get this max use.
and for 2 more pickleball
Well,
courts.
the time, you've got to have time for the solids and everything.
Yeah,
I get it.
A 6 hour dose,
Water.
4 minute dose, wait 6 hours.
Yeah.
That's 6 hours.
Septic approved.
I would
You are.
love to have a conversation about adding an extra tank. I think for future proofing in is Southwood becomes more and more saturated and more people are using the parks.
Yeah.
But then also scheduling in the future, I feel like until we have that, they should have to schedule some teams on Sunday or a Friday.
The other thing that's gonna happen here, I mean, their statement about we shut everything down on the November 1, it's not true.
That's I'll point that out.
Last year, we made decisions based on a night like tonight,
Weather.
where all of a sudden it's just saturated. We're like, hey, we need to make an adjustment. We can't play this weekend's games. Well, you need to give us 2 weeks. Well, we can't. This time of year, it's day to day at best. So if you want 2 weeks, then we'll pick a date. And generally November 1st will be, however, if it's a nice fall, we're not going to just shut the fields down. We're going to make decisions because they want to be over there. So we're going to make adjustments that, to the best of our ability. I'd rather keep the games over there as long as I can instead of having to move them. It's all weather dependent. So I mean, that's the way we do it. It's not, just this
Is
date,
the
this
community
time.
center overflow, or is it going to be used for games? What is their big plan?
That's a great question.
We don't know.
We think it's their winter game field. We think that was the
Full
initial
size.
intention. I think when you're looking at the winter and what we've done now, there's 4 select teams. These are really the winter teams we're talking about. And I'm happy that we have 2 sand-based fields now that they can choose from. So I can't even explain how much time Sky puts into field scheduling. It really is an enormous amount of his job. And which is unfortunate because it should be pretty simple, right? You should just be able to plug people in. today's conversation was, if the select teams want more security, schedule the elementary field. If you want to go to the sports complex, that's fine, but just know that you may get the call at 10 in the morning that, hey, weather's horrible, we're moving you over to the elementary. So, and then you, as the coach, volunteer, have to then deal with calling parents or texting, So this is just all about building trust and communication. I think when we build some bridges between the soccer community and us, so that when we say something, there's not this instant, they're out to get us mentality, I think we'll be okay. I think we're all on the same page. I think there is it's just a little bit of work to be done. But I think it's all, I'm thrilled they're here. I'm thrilled that they're wanting to build their programs. This is what our parks are for. So, this is mostly positive, but there's some challenges. We'll get there.
The other thing that changes in November is we ask them to not book any games before 11. Try for frost.
Yeah.
I pulled in there on a frosty day and just cringe when I see hundreds of people just trampling a frozen field. It's just like, a frost delay on a golf course. They shouldn't be out there.
And this is all part of our field policies that you guys updated, that we updated last year. And all of this stuff is in there, and they agree to it. And this is our first winter with the new policies. But now there's 2 sand-based fields. 2 years ago, there was no sand-based fields. Last year, we added the elementary school. This year, they added the community center. So there should be no reason that games can't go on between those 2 fields. So I think it'll be much more positive. But the need to be at the sports complex in winter is a challenge. And so, we'll make it as open as we can. What we do. Get those kids playing, get them off the screens. And that is the end of the comprehensive plan.
Right, next item on the agenda, moving into new business, campground.
All right, this is following up on an agenda item from last month. And I'll go through some of this. Currently, our loan, which is a limited tax general obligation bond, has a balance of $407,915 that we owe. This was as of a week or so ago. The final payment for that loan is due to be paid off in November of 2045, which is also the month I plan on retiring. So that's a coincidence. Thank you, Jake. We have a property fund total of $189,077. That's attached to the bond as we talked about last month, so it has to be used towards this project. At the last board meeting, I was instructed to get pricing to finish the site plan for the campground and to get information from the bank as far as how this would impact if we made a large payment towards the principal. And also just a reminder, never mind, I say that later. I did hear from J.A. Brennan, who did the original plans, that it would be only around $5,000 to get an updated site plan, which is good. We thought it would be more, but because all they're basically doing is polishing up their pictures, not that much. The bank did confirm that if we made a payment, it wouldn't affect our monthly payment, which is what we assumed, but would shorten the length of the loan. Still waiting to hear back from the exact date. What I asked them for was, okay, if we took the $5,000 out of the money and put the rest towards the principal, what would be our last payoff day? How much would it shrink?
And what would we save in interest?
Yeah,
Assuming no.
that's a good question. I didn't ask that, but we're paying about $2,500 a month right now towards this loan, so it's not an insignificant amount of money, $30,000 a year. So the sooner we can pay it off, the better. And just as a reminder, our legal counsel, Pacifica, strongly suggests that we use this money as soon as possible. So what we're asking you guys is 2 questions, I guess. One is, do we think investing in a site plan is a good use of this money? And if so, then what's your feeling on taking the rest of the money and just putting it back towards the loan?
Confirmation that when we say updated site plan, that is for the entire campground,
That is.
correct? Not the
Correct.
phase A, it's the,
Yes.
okay.
I'll say, this is just something to throw into that conversation, because I did not mention this about the traffic study that Island County wants us to do, that it will include the campground and the pool. If the campground wasn't a pending project, is how they put it. it would eliminate that requirement. So my question back to the county, which I haven't got an answer yet, was, okay, can we make it not pending? Let's table the campground for a second. Deal with the traffic study and then submit the site plan and start this process over. Because we're really not that far into the process at this point.
So, so
Tuesday.
in their traffic study,
Mhm.
how many different places are they going to lay down their, whatever you call that?
Mhm.
So they'll lay it down on Langley.
Yeah.
They'll lay it down at the main entrance and they'll lay it down by the school. I mean, are we talking for 3 different places?
Maybe. That's part of what Tuesday is. I mean, the whole Max Wilton connection to the pickleball courts doesn't make a lot of sense, and that's what we're trying to clarify. Yeah, and I don't know. That's part of what we're gonna be asking.
All right.
They'd even thrown in the conversation the idea that we should get the traffic engineer to ask whether we should do a turn lane into the sports complex for 2 pickleball courts. And I said, and that would kill the project. I mean, that would be the end of the pickleball project because we couldn't afford that. So anyways, I think a face-to-face conversation. We've been doing emails at this point. Sometimes you just got to sit around. I think common sense will win out.
It's interesting because we had, 4 times the population in the schools, the amount of traffic on the roads between the middle school, the elementary school, intermediate school, high school, busing at the seams surpasses anything that we're talking about right now, which I don't understand how that can become such a major issue.
They have their rules and they have their policies, and I just need to understand. I just need to, before we start jumping through hoops, just got to make sure. So he seems like a very reasonable guy.
Well, and it's quite, I mean, right, with the turnover at the county, it is quite possible that he has no visual appreciation for the layout, right? And so,
Sure. That's what you're hoping.
draw a picture. Yeah,
So anyways, Tuesday, that'll be a good
showing's
conversation.
better than telling, Eric. You
Right.
know that. You're
Showing is
right.
better than telling.
Very good.
Krista has a question about the campground.
Yeah, so do we need to perhaps apply some of this money to a traffic
Traffic
study?
study, we talked about that internally. I think a couple thoughts. One is because it's bond related money. If they do the traffic study, if they have to do it for all 3 locations, which I'm hoping they won't have to. Because it's bond related money, to have it attached to 2 other projects might be complicated.
Right.
For as much as, I mean, I think the traffic study for all 3 spots is, maybe 5,000. I mean, something like that. It's not going to break our budget, but it's a significant amount of, of a small project. But so I think that might get complicated if we try to, because I do have that idea too, like, hey, maybe this will pay for the traffic study. But I think because if it's attached to the pool, like the pickleball project, I think I'd rather
It's
just.
kind of bait and switch. He doesn't.
Okay,
The other thing is the campground's several years away.
right.
They're gonna make us do this again when we
Right.
close. So that's another thing I'm pushing back on.
And it also will be a lot more relevant at that point.
Because then we'll know the pool impact.
The pool impact, I mean, it kind of doesn't make any sense for a project that far out to,
I'm a big fan of people come to common sense when they sit across from each other, just have a conversation. So I think Tuesday will be a good day and we'll figure a lot of that out. But for now, we have this big pot of money that we need to figure out. We need to pay this loan down. And the question, I guess, for you guys is, do you want us to put aside the money for the site plan so we can get that done? Or do you, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then what I would do with that, just so we know, is that we wouldn't pay towards the principal till we know the real cost of the site plan. Because we're gonna wanna put as much money towards the print. So that might take a couple months, maybe even longer. So we'd get Jay Brennan working on the site plan immediately. And then once that work was done, we'd have a bill, we'd subtract that bill from the total. And then we go from there. So really, there's no action item for you guys tonight, because we don't know the number yet. I'd come back to you when we have that actual number and ask you approval to pay off the principal at that
Right.
point. So any other questions or comments on campground?
No.
All right.
Okay, next on the new business agenda is project manager for the
All right.
aquatic and
And
recreation.
I think for this, I have a PowerPoint. At least it's a lot of information. I'm not going to go through every one of these. These were in your packet. for your sake, I won't do that. But I'll just highlight the project manager. The first slide was in your packet, which just basically shows what, an overview of what the project manager does. So it's not just, a guy with a hard hat walking around talking to the contractor. And the big thing I think would be this bullet point here is the money saved by minimizing mistakes and delays. The need, I don't think I really need to convince you of, but I put that in your packet as well. None of us on staff are contractors. Like none of us have built, oddly enough, none of us have built $27 million pools. And the amount of time it's taking away or saving from the staff is significant. So let's talk more about the process and what we've done so far. So capital projects of this size, and this was really good in Atlanta last week because I did a lot of research online, and then I was able to go around and talk to people that actually have built major facilities. To hire a project manager firm, you're looking at 3 to 5%. Some people said maybe as low as 2% of your total budget, which in this case would be 800,000 to like 1.3 million, a significant amount. Another option, another approach to hiring a project manager is just to hire a person, put it out like a job and do a 2 to 3 year contract. Hire someone who's qualified to know all the ins and outs of this kind of project and basically put them on payroll for a couple of years. That's a cheaper option. So when we went out to what's called a request for qualifications. We put it out broadly to both firms and to individuals, asking basically not for you to tell us how much it's going to cost at this point, just tell us what your qualifications are to work on this kind of project. We received 3 bids. All were for firms. We didn't hear any inquiries or bids from individuals. And then we moved forward with the interviews because we wanted to see what we had. And we interviewed 2 of the firms. We conducted full reference checks to hear from other projects they had done. And the determination unanimously of staff was that Bloom Projects LLC was the most qualified and the best fit for our project. Well, that's good. But then it comes to, what's the, then we start talking pricing. I will point out that Bloom Projects are homeowners on the island and the staff, there's be 2 people assigned to this project. The other one lives on the island. So these are not mainlanders. They are island people, which is a nice touch. But also a group that has done major projects in Seattle. For the Mariners, for UW, for Amazon, and also has done a pool. So we can show some pictures of that. So the decision of who to go with was the easy one. But the cost of what a real project manager costs wasn't factored in properly in the budget. So which is fine, I mean, at this point. So there's a couple options on the table. I'm going to throw this out, then we can chat back and forth. Option 1 would be to contract Bloom Projects for what I would call phase 1. Phase 1 gets us through the bidding process, which I think is the most important date of our entire project. The day we open those bids, to me, is, it's huge. That we get a bid that we can accept, and that we get that we make sure that what we are putting in that bid packet is the pool that we want, with no mistakes, no oversights, that it's just done correctly. To get us through the bidding process is not going to be cheap, though. It would be a contract for an amount not to exceed $226,881. It would be an hourly agreement, which means it wouldn't just be a lump sum that we pay. It would be a monthly invoice, just like we do with our CPA, just like we do with our legal. That it would be an hourly wage, that they would invoice us for the hours actually worked. Like I said, it'd be a 2-person. Mark Bloom, who is the owner of the company, and who said at this stage of his career he's not doing these kind of projects, but because it's on the island, he would take the point on this. And he has a number 2, is a person who lives over by Double Bluff, who is kind of his. I say she's kind of his Carrie, the detail person, knows all the numbers, gets into the weeds with all the details. Let's call it.
He's much more high qualified than I.
No, I wouldn't say that. Anyways, so that's that option 1 is to basically let's get through the bidding. Let's get to the point that we have a bid on hand that we feel comfortable with, and through the bid process where the bids have been reviewed and processed. Staff, mostly, me and Carrie, basically, we are working on the 25-26 budget and looking at what our next step would be in this. So basically what I'm suggesting at this point is we get through phase one. We got to get through that bid. We need to know that this building is done perfectly with no, with a professional set of eyes on it like that, that's done this before. And then we need to look at phase two. Now, phase two of this, meaning the project manager for the rest of the project or the build, we may decide to stay with Bloom. I mean, that could be a decision you guys make. We'll come back at that point with financial options of what it would take. He knows that we don't have as much money as it would take to do the entire thing at that level. He knows that. And he's still very eager to at least do phase one, just because, it's his community. He wants this to be done well. I think that's valuable. There is, just so you have another option. The other option is to not go with this, to basically go back out to an RFP or to even create a job description for a project man. The school district is doing this. School district has a person that they hired with all the different kinds of projects they're doing. I would suggest their projects aren't as complicated as what the pool will be. But that was their approach, and they found someone. But we got no interest the first time. So there certainly is a risk to that. That might be something that for the phase two of our thing, we decide to do. If money is tight and we don't have the money, what I would suggest that if we enter into phase one with Bloom, that maybe a month or so before we go out to bid, that we put a job description together and throw it out there and see a 2-year contract job. So it wouldn't be a permanent position, obviously, and just see what we get. And at least then when we have to make a decision, we'll know if there's other interest out there, refreshed interest. And at that point, Carrie and I will have an updated financial package that we can put together to say, this is what we can afford. So I think it's the best path forward. Like I said, I think we're just in a very critical stage now. I think the getting to bid and getting it done well. So the 226,000 up to, I don't think it'll be that much. That's the ceiling it would be. Would come out of the bond proceeds. We did have money budgeted for a project manager, so this isn't a new crazy, this portion of it is not this insane that we don't have money for. We're adding new things. It's simply a lot more than I think the initial projections were being made out. So
What did we initially have it budgeted for? On the top of your head?
we did, but the initial budget had like $50,000 in it, which they broke that into a 1-year position. That's the numbers that he explained to me, that it was a 2-day a week for 1-year positions, how they broke the numbers up. Again, I don't know. I wasn't new.
That 3 to 5%, that was like 800,000 to 1.3 million. Was that for the entire project or just one phase?
It's a good question. I think it kind of depends on how you do it. At this point, we've got, if you did it from the entire project, because we've obviously spent money beyond the 27 million, right? So had we done it from the beginning, which would have been obviously more effective, it would have been a $28-29 million because of what we've already spent. So it would have covered the entire, and that's just ballpark. Like I said, that was my research, and in the conversations last week with several different people that have done some capital projects this size, they said, yeah, if you're hiring a firm, that's a pretty standard, a pretty standard number. If you're doing a smaller project, the percentage is higher. If you're doing a $1 million project or something, you're looking at maybe 5 to 10, even 15% per cap. So there's no, I'm giving you generalizations here.
Very general,
yeah.
I had a chance to talk to Brian about this earlier, coming into it, but the question I have is, have we done any research on what option 2 cost-wise is a substantial savings versus a firm, the players out there? Or is there, any idea that there might be somebody local? And I understand Bloom's basically kind of doing the same thing, but I'm open to the option. I'm just curious, I think
It would be a substantial savings. I mean, if we had a person we could put on contract for 150,000 a year, it certainly would be a savings. I would say that when we did the RFQ and we put that out in a few different places, that person could have applied. That person could have given it that person, so we didn't get any nibbles. I didn't get any calls. The calls that I got were from firms.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean they're not there. It just
Yeah.
means that we didn't hit them with this.
But if you were a local person, you would have caught that.
Yeah, and it has to be a local person that can, that knows more than just how to build a
Right.
building. And there's a little bit, just because of the complication of this, yes.
And part of that, so I know that the committee went out and looked at pools recently built in the area.
Mhm.
Did any of them work with a project manager?
Good question. I don't know, other
And
than,
wouldn't that be, or perhaps that's the individual or
Yeah.
firm?
Do you have an answer to that?
with the most recent pool.
It wasn't a question that I had, but obviously that's a great approach. I agree. I think, contacting the same pools that we've been looking at.
Right. Or, again, the ones recently, because I think to kind of what you're saying, like, we don't want, it can't be just anyone. They need to know how to build a pool.
Yeah.
Like that is specific.
I will say that Steve Burke was asked, who was the director out at Port Angeles. I think the reason the number was so low in the projections, my guess is that ARC's pool experience was doing the Port Angeles pool, where the director there had done these projects. So he really was the project manager because that was his experience. So they didn't have the need for someone to come in and scrutinize because they had the person in place that basically could do that. But he was asked if he'd be interested, and he said no. And they're done that, I think was the phrase I heard he said.
How long did we have it open? The bidding?
Was it a month? Probably, I'd have to go back and look. Might have been 3 weeks. There's a couple of key places you advertise, things like this. But like I said, at this point, October 16th to 2024, and we could be as close as 4 months or so from bid opening if everything goes perfectly. Could be longer. But yeah, I think at this point, I think we have to make a decision we have to compartmentalize this a little bit and get the bid, after bid. And I think after bids where we may go back out, take another swing, seeing if we could find someone, the perfect person that would be cheaper. I think that's, I don't think that's a horrible approach. So
So in sitting in on the interviews, became really clear, we're way behind. We're out of time. Like we gotta move, we gotta hire a project manager now. Or you're not gonna have drawings that may not have
Is the
issues.
rest of the board open to bringing Rich into the conversation?
Thank you. I wasn't aware about the project manager question. In the past, when we did these projects, well, we'll speak first to the other aquatic centers in the state. My feeling is because they were much larger projects for much larger institutions, they probably have project management skills in-house. Probably most likely that's there. In this case, project management doesn't necessarily need to be an aquatic expert. Project management can be someone who has put in operational facilities, I would call them. Because the unique aspect of this facility rests in our aquatic engineering team, ARC, and then I forgot what's the name of the pool company. Remember that?
ADG.
ADG. So they're going to be coming with the actual aquatic knowledge, and I don't know if the project manager's job is really to question that. Project manager's job is to make sure that all the pieces are in place and flowing both from within the engineering firm and within all the other entities necessary to make this project happen. So I wouldn't necessarily limit a project manager to someone who's done pools. That's my first thing. The second thing is our engineering firm used to provide that service. We had a project manager. It's actually where you made money on the engineering projects was by offering project management. A lot of times you don't make it on the actual engineering. So, or it adds to the profit. So I don't know if ARC had that role. I think early in the project, I think we did ask if they could provide a project management.
I asked.
They didn't want to.
They did. Yeah.
Okay. So, the idea of going with an external company, if you do go with someone for this, I would find someone to do it from start to finish. Because the problem is, if you do it just for the phase one, which I think is going to be through the contract document phase or something?
Yeah, through the bid opening.
Through the bid process. Yeah, I would highly recommend you find someone to do capable of doing the whole project in phases, have them agree that they would be secured for the first phase through CD, and then they would continue on if budget was allocated for it. Because otherwise, you're going to have another team come in who are going to be like, the hell, the first people. Yeah, that happens all the time. Because they're not going to want to be held responsible for things they might see as mistakes of someone else. And the third thing is that Parks has all these projects, and you guys are working, there's two of you doing the job of like 7 people.
Yeah, 3.
So, yeah, 3 people doing the job of 9 people. It wouldn't hurt to find someone internally who could handle the pool, who could handle all the other projects. I'm not guessing, I don't know the complications of the other ones, but I wouldn't limit to someone who has aquatic experience. It'd be nice if they did, but I would do it more toward public use facility and government contracting. That's the kind of skill set I would look for. But it's your guys' choice. I would just, if you're hiring an external firm, you're going to pay for their overhead, their profit. And then if we look at $250,000 to $300,000, whatever, that's going to then be the sauna. So I'm also a little worried about that, but it's your guys' choice. I would just say that's my feedback. I would look to do an internal hire first, and then only go with a contracting firm if could find it for the skill set. I'd say that.
Appreciate that.
Dealing with a project manager years ago when we passed bonds and had a lot of different projects going. I mean, I'm still on the ground every day dealing with contractors. And I mean, this is such a complicated thing. We have to have a project manager. It's already going to consume my day. My job's going to completely change when this kicks off.
It seems like Bloom's a happy medium because willing to not necessarily be a whole team, but rather take it on as an individual. And that's cutting costs somewhat. And to Rich's point, then still being able hourly to say, okay, we'd like to continue this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just whoever you do, I would assume that they would be capable of doing it from start to finish.
That would clearly be the goal. You're right, because they're trying to restart again.
Yeah.
I think the other thing about the impact of the budget of the pool is the only money I see coming out of the project manager is what we're asking for tonight. Anything else we find for the next couple of years, I think Carrie and I are looking at other parts of the budget for, because the pool budget is so tight, and we want to, unless the budget comes in way under and we've got some latitude, that would be a great problem. But as we talked about last month, there's other things we want in that pool. So that's part of what Carrie and I are working on, is that funding beyond what we're asking for tonight. The goal would be not to take that out of the bond, because we want to make sure that we get as much pool stuff as we can. But as Tom said, project managers it's going to make a huge difference. It's going to be, we've had great people working really hard on all the details, ARC, JCC, ADG, a lot of acronyms. But at the end of the day, it's time to have that person with the, making sure that 10 years from now, we're not saying, oh, can't believe we didn't catch that.
Yeah.
That's the stuff. And justifying, hopefully, their position. That's part of what I talked to Bloom about, was if they agree to this, after 4 months, 6 months, whenever we're ending phase 1, we're going to want to see something tangible showing, okay, these are things that we caught that you wouldn't have caught, that really make that kind of saving difference. So,
One part comment, there'll be another manager that might be required in the project called construction manager.
Mhm.
And that person comes in play when you actually start the actual, the general contractor comes in. A CM is usually done to oversee the accuracy and the timeliness of the general contractor, because they can't all, a lot of motions. So if you do go down this road, I would ask a PM if they've also have CR experience or CM experience.
that's a good question, and then we have to have that conversation. And then this would encompass both of those roles. So that's right. Yeah. We also have, as approved before, a commissioning agent, which only deals with the engineering stuff. That was a much smaller contract, but we also have an engineering firm on ready for when, or to look at some of so a lot of good resources. Again, the key is we want the pool made well. I think this is a necessary step to get that to happen. So
My feeling is I'm pro Bloom right now, just because of your comment, Tom, about expediting the process. And the fact that you put it out and you didn't get individuals applying anyway. That combination and the willingness of a local person who has that experience, also has pool experience, regardless whether it's valuable or not, it's just one more additive to it. And we're, willing to work hourly. For me, I'm okay with that. So, own personal opinion.
And I can make the specific details of their rates, available later. I don't have it with me right here, but I will say it's comparable to what we pay our CPA. It's comparable to what we pay our legal. It's not an hourly rate that's gonna make you go crazy. It was right in the range of what we pay our other professional services for.
I think both firms, talked about how the past projects, they've found millions of dollars of savings within just by heading off potential issues. They both kind of made that point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think you go into this hoping that they're going to find mistakes that before they're a mistake. So, both firms, we're talking about building a facility 25, 35 years down the road. You're not just, we're saving money up front, costing on the backside. So,
So if you guys are in favor, the motion would be to approve entering into a contract with Bloom, for project management duties up to $226,000.
Other discussion?
Oh, I think we definitely need a project manager. It sounds like it could be the right firm, individual. So wrapping my head around the price.
Yeah.
That's the thing, for me. But if we go back out, pulling the dice to see if we get other people that, could do the job and do it as well, that's a gamble. And then what if it's the same price or more? So I could
I think the cost of
open
floundering
to the, right,
is.
I could be open to going forward with it.
And it could be a lot less than what we got the C leap is what I asked him for. What's the most it could be so that we, but they will send monthly invoices that will be scrutinized to make sure that the work is being done proportionally, and they won't be given duties that, not gonna have them over just to talk.
Yeah.
So anyways, so a good question.
It feels to me, given that they both live here on the south end of the island, they are part of they're our constituents, that feels like they have a higher stakeholding in it, right? I think it would be an uncomfortable position for them if they didn't provide a great level of service.
I agree with that, Jennifer.
Then they came across as a personal project to them. It was, like I said, it wasn't, when I did the reference checks, I'm dealing with, talking to the facilities director for the Mariners and the Amazon, and all these big corporations and all this, and talking about, the pool specific, which was the Seattle Tennis Club that they did, the guy said we wouldn't have a pool today without. They were that paramount to our project. Very similar situation where they had a staff that wasn't, Rich brings up a good point. A lot of these projects are, I came from a bigger city where you had engineers and public works and building people, and you could go upstairs to the third floor and have a conversation about a lot of this stuff. Me and Carrie and Tom have great conversations, but they're not that,
There's a lot of this.
yeah, there's a lot of learning. The learning curve has been large, but so the resources are just different. And that's a great point. So,
Right, so the motion would be for 226,880.
up to. Not to exceed, yep.
Well, I'm feeling this really compelling sense of urgency. So I will make a motion to enter into contract with Bloom
Projects LLC.
Bloom Project LLC. In amount not to exceed $226,000 to provide project management services.
I'll second that motion.
It has been moved and seconded to enter into a contract with Bloom Project LLC to provide project management services not to exceed $226,881. All those in favor say aye.
Eric, I.
Krista, I.
Jake, I.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, the motion passes.
I did, I put this in here, but it doesn't make as much, but this is the pool. After this point, I can share that out later. I don't think that was in your packet. All right. We're down to our last item.
Okay. Last on our agenda is the solar array funding for the Aquatic Recreation Center.
All right. So I think this is a good thing to talk about now. I think solar array is part of our plan at the new aquatic center to provide that enhancement, the emergency services. So just a quick recap, we did receive a $100,000 grant from the Washington State Department of Commerce to do the design portion of the solar array. I think initially we thought ARC would do the design portion, but we found out later, somewhat recently, that they only do a small portion of it. They said about $10,000 worth of it, and that the actual design happens when the contractor hires the company to do it, and that company does the design work, which is fine. It just is a little different than what we expected. The cost of the solar array inclusively, I mean, altogether, is projected to be around $920,000, and that's with soft cost included. Our hope is to receive what's called Track 2 funding, which is the second part of the grant. So the DOC put out the design portion where you could apply for several places around here, including the city of Langley, had got the same grant. Track 2 funding, a couple weeks ago I called because this wasn't a grant I was involved with directly. So I called our grant manager and started asking some questions. I got some interesting information. David Hecker is his name. One is that they don't do the solar grant funding next year, which is fine, but that the earliest we can apply for the next cycle is February or March of 26. That's when it's going to be open. And at best case, it would be about 6 months after that, if you got awarded it, that you'd be in contract. So now we're into fall of 26 at the earliest. But then the bigger part of the question was, okay, so if we've already done the work or part of the work at that point, can we be reimbursed? This is different than RCO. RCO would have said yes to that question. Department of Commerce said no, that if the work's been done, we don't reimburse backwards. Okay. He said there are some loopholes for partially done work, but he goes, honestly, your grant submission gets put on a scale system. It's going to be a big hit if you're already halfway done with it. Why are we funding something that you're going to do anyways, would be the logic. So, okay, well, that's a big deal. So then I went back to ARC and I said, okay, so what are our options? And ARC said, well, your logical option at that point, if you want to keep this, which we do, is to make the building what they call solar ready, run the conduits, transfers, do all the stuff that wouldn't be easy to do once the building's open. And he goes, that would be probably less than $100,000 to do that portion. I said, okay, got my attention. And then, assuming we get the grant in sometime in 26 or even early 27, after the building's even open, we can add the solar array components at that point because the foundational stuff is all done. So it kind of makes some sense. I kind of put it into a timeline here just because it helps my mind to see things in a there we go. So it doesn't, there's nothing negative about what's going on with the solar array. It's just it's a timing issue is all this is we don't know if we get the grant until it's after it's too late to use it, if it's part of the current project. The other thing to point out is that the money for this is not in the 27 million. ARC assumed that we were getting the grant because that's what they were told, that it's likely. So they did not put this. So this to not table this for now would be adding the $920,000 on top of what our budget is. So it's not a cost savings, which is fine. So the logical approach seems to me to be tonight to approve ARC to make the building solar ready, which would be an extra cost up to $100,000, but it seems to be a pretty important part. This is something we told the public we were doing, but not to add the components of the solar array into the project. So when they go out to bid, that wouldn't be part of the project. During construction, and this would fall back on me, is to work with a company to get the designs finished because we have that grant. the grant actually ends like in March or April of next year. We can get an extension up to a year. So I talked to him about that too. So we would have to get that done during the process of the build. We can't put that off because we have the money to spend now. And then, as I said before, February or March, we would apply for the Department of Commerce grant. And then if it was awarded, we do it. And if it wasn't awarded, we'd look at other options to fund it because I think it is an important part of the project. And so it's just it's a timing thing. Right now, the way the DOC timing is, it wouldn't be conducive to us getting that grant if we did the work up front. The other factor, which he pointed out, which they're kind of worried about, is there's an initiative on the ballot in November that could have a real negative impact on funding. Because if that were to pass, some of our funding would be dried up, and that could impact phase track two too. So I think all good. I think at this point we just have to make the decision for what the project can handle now. And my recommendation is that we just approve the solar ready portion so that we're ready for it. And we table the rest of it and let me work on the design portion as a separate project.
One question.
Sure.
So with the DOC, if we had started it, that would decrease our application.
That's a good way to put it.
However, if it is ready,
Mhm.
does that increase?
Excellent question. Yeah, I think it's a neutral impact because I asked the question oppositely. Is being solar ready considered starting the project? And they had said no, you know what I'm saying? Because we're doing some of the work for it.
Right.
And hands off. And so he said, no, that wouldn't, he goes, it would just be, it couldn't hurt, I guess, to say that we have the components in place. Once you approve this,
Okay.
it's not going to take us 3 years to do it.
Gotcha.
Buy a big generator and attach things
We're
together.
kind of getting it shovel ready.
Yeah.
Right.
So is this having ARC make the building solar ready, is that something that is standardized? Right, so if we go ahead and make it solar ready based upon what ARC's level of expertise is, and then we get down the path and they go, oh, well, you shoulda.
Yeah,
Good question.
that's a
Is
good
that a
question.
legit question?
Yeah,
Wasn't the generator part of, you need a generator
yeah, it's a big part of
before this is ready? Or lights go out, we don't heat the pools,
it.
Right.
we move water. And that's not included in.
So I think the answer to your question is, if the solar array comes in, are they going to be like, oh, why did you put this here? Why are you put that there? I guess that's possible. I think what they would be putting in is the stuff to get the generator ready. The space for the generator would be reserved for, some of that kind of stuff would kind of be put in place. Is it standardized? My answer is I assume so, but I didn't ask the question.
I mean, it seems like that would be
You would think.
likely.
Certainly something I could ask.
On that same token, since we're putting 100,000 into the infrastructure, getting that ready, now when we write the grant, are we now do we have more money to create a better array, or is it decreased off the
Oh.
grant we're asking for?
I
Yeah,
think
so would that 100 would go for the design of the
Exactly.
array?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I'm asking. a
Asking,
third
yes,
question.
right.
Yeah.
it's a reimbursable grant, so they're going to reimburse us up to a certain amount for whatever it costs. So it's not going to be advantageous for us to have spent that money up front because they're going to say, oh, here, we're going to turn in receipts. Here's what it costs to do this, and they're going to reimburse us for those.
But if November went south in terms of what it does, that would help us as well.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'm glad we had this conversation now. This would have been really difficult 6, 7, 8 months from now after the bids have been done. So fortunately, I think it's a clean approach. I think it keeps the solar array project
Great.
active. The only negative is that we're having to use a little bit of our bond money to be, but it's a valuable input. Even if we didn't get the grant, this is valuable to have the generator stuff and all that stuff. Yeah, that's much more complicated when the walls are up and the floor's been poured.
Yeah.
Going that phrase. That's pretty. So anyways, so that my recommendation then is that we do just that. But any other questions or thoughts or concerns?
Is it proposed that, assuming they we go with the solar array down the road, and they would be on the roof, on the sides, I'm assuming on the roof.
Yeah.
The highest point and do we get a good amount of sunshine where the building's
You know,
going to be?
I wish Matt was here tonight because this is really his pet project that he did a lot of work on. He's the one that got us the grant for the design.
Yeah.
I don't know all the logistics. I don't know as much about it. I don't know if Rich, do you know as much about the solar array that?
No, I just know that that was a big part of our.
Yeah.
The sustainability part of the project, but I do know also we put those in that there would be I don't know if we ever did it. I know we didn't do it, but there's a study that can tell you based upon the coordinates of the site, what its sun exposure is and things, but solar ready is basically just allowing the engineering design to include the electrical infrastructure would be designed in such a way that it could accommodate the future components. The structural would have the running conduits. The roof structure would be designed in a certain way that could hold the weight. The anchor bolts would be already entered. All that stuff would be ahead of time. So it sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, the good question though. I don't know if it's there. I mean, unless there's trees blocking it, I think that maybe that's a question someone to say, do we know that solar is a good idea there? And there's probably a real easy answer for it. I assume it's yes.
I don't think it's worse. I've been looking into solar a lot, and that slope of the roof and the area it's in is gonna be just like any other house on Whidbey. You know, you're gonna get enough sun
It
there.
has to do with the trees and
Yeah.
the shadows.
Yeah, I'm just
Other than
saying it's
that,
up
yeah.
so high and the clearing around it, I
I
don't,
think it should be fine, yeah.
and it's not powering the whole site.
It's great having you today, Rich.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that, would it just be 10,000 in engineering design and the 90,000 in construction? Is that the way they're breaking it down?
ARC said they could put the design work they would do
Mhm.
would be probably no more than $10,000
Yeah.
of cost. And he goes, so if you have 100,000, the company that actually does the build would hire a designer or have their designer do it, and that would be the remaining money.
That makes sense.
No further discussion. I would entertain a motion.
It's your turn.
All right.
Keep it simple.
First sentence.
So we want to approve $100,000 towards,
Would you make a motion, please, Jake?
well, I'm just,
Oh, you're noodling?
I'm noodling. So we want to have the $100,000 towards approving, making the building solar ready.
I think the first sentence there is just about exactly,
Mhm.
because it's already part of the, it's just.
Oh, approve ARC.
I think
Okay.
ARC to build it solar ready.
Perfect. So I'll make a motion to approve ARC to make the building solar ready, but not add the components for the solar array in the big bid packet. And I need to include the 100,000.
Well, they know that's part of the project.
I will second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ARC to make the building solar ready, but not add the components for the solar array in the bid packet. Those in favor say aye.
Eric, I.
Krista, aye.
Jake, I.
Jennifer, aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the motion passes.
Good job, everybody.
And with that, my fellow commissioners, we are adjourned. Yeah. At 7:55.
Start talking yet? Recording in.